Hey everyone, it's Matt from IGN and I'm here with Bose.
Hey, what's up, guys?
We're doing a dual video review. It's the first time we've ever done this, but we both love Metroid. We both played through the game, and we thought we'd give you both of our opinions.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get right into it.
Before we go any further, you should know there are spoilers in this video review, so watch at your own risk. Corruption's the third game in the Metroid Prime trilogy, and in many ways it's the best of the three, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the design, just from a mechanical and a visual standpoint, is much better than the other two games overall. I think this is the definitive version.
I have to agree.
Yeah.
If you're a Nintendo fan, you obviously know about the Metroid Prime series. It goes all the way back to the original Metroid games, except now they've been reinvented in 3D with a first-person perspective. In Corruption, you once more play as famous bounty hunter Samus Aran. This time, though, you're battling both Dark Samus and there's going to be some twists along the way. You're going to see the hunters from the DS game, and you may even see some classic enemies from Metroid games way back. What you're going to notice right off the bat is that Prime 3 has a much more cinematic feel than previous games, and that also extends to voice acting. All the characters, humanoid this time around, actually have speaking parts. It's funny because we often complain Zelda didn't have any voice roles, but Retro really did it right. Samus doesn't talk, everybody else does, and it actually works really well.
Yeah, and dare I say it actually has more of a Halo feel almost, because it's very epic. You feel like it's the end of a trilogy, and you're actually part of this larger group in a larger universe this time around.
Early screens of Prime 3 didn't look so hot, honestly. It was kind of blurry, not so great on the environment selection. I don't know if you remember those, Bozan.
Yeah, absolutely was. But, you really have to give this game credit, and you really have to see it in 60 frames per second in all its glory, widescreen, 480p, to truly see where the game has kind of gone beyond what Echoes and what Prime 1 originally did.
Exactly. So to be a little more specific, though, you've got now bloom lighting, which looks really good, I think.
Right.
They've upped the texture resolution, so if you're seeing the environments up close, they look a little crisper. Maybe not noticeable in some of our screens, but once you actually have it on your TV, you'll be able to tell. Beyond that, the particle effects have seen a dramatic improvement. Character models look a little better, and animation all around is looking pretty spot on.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look back and you think about what you saw when you played Prime or when you played Echoes. It doesn't really look that much different, but when you actually get it in there and you're playing it, you see all these little differences, it really starts to add up.
Yeah, and also coming off Echoes, which had the drab, purplish dark world, here you've got a variety of gorgeous environments, and you're traveling through a galactic empire, basically. You're going between planets, all which have a different look. So you have that fire world, you have that snow world, you have the high-tech environments, you have the biological environments, and you've got some crazy stuff in between. We won't even talk about some of the seed places you go to, but I mean, there's some, let's just say, alien stuff going down.
Moving away from the visuals, though, is really what made the game for me, which was the gameplay. Basically, the Wii Remote is exactly what what the game needed to draw in guys like me that are very shooter-intensive, but maybe didn't really give Prime a fair shake on GameCube as they should have.
Yeah, exactly. We played Medal of Honor, we played Call of Duty on Wii, and this has them beat. The controls are tighter, it's faster, it's more responsive all around. Not to say it's perfect, you don't have a mouse and keyboard set up at your hands here, but you do have the ability to really navigate the world more speedily and just with a lot more freedom than you had before.
And then you've got the 3 different modes that Retro basically lets you use. Advanced is pretty much the only one I'd ever use. Am I in agreement with that, right?
Absolutely. It's if you use the basic mode, the standard mode that it comes with, that's basically playing Red Steel mode. That's baby mode. I would not recommend in the least.
Right. Yeah, Red Steel Prime is pretty much how we describe it.
Yeah, Advanced is the one because you can actually turn much quicker and it just feels much more responsive. I know we're beating a dead horse here. It's really good. You guys are going to like it. It definitely proves the Wii Remote more than any other game to date.
Yeah, and then Retro actually proved that you can use the Wii Remote gesture system without being really gimmicky, too. You've got basically like train controls. You can push in, pull out. You have to, pump some objects in the game. You use the grappling hook with your left hand and the nunchuck controller.
Yeah, I really like that grappling feature. You just basically throw your nunchuck outward and then snap backward. You can pull shields off. You can pull tails off enemies. You can pull panels off walls. All this cool stuff they've really done with it.
Yeah, they used it a ton more than I thought they originally were going to. And you combine that with the IR and kind of with the immersion factor you get just basically from tinkering with all these things in the environment. And overall, it just feels like a great game. At the same time, though, also the guys that are more adventure-intensive are going to be happy to hear that the game is very segmented. There are certain areas that are shooter-intensive, and there are certain areas where you may not even fire a gun except to open doors, for large stretches at a time.
Yeah, you could call this a first-person shooter. You could also call it a first-person adventure game, and I actually prefer the latter. I still think it's an adventure game. It's not like the game's suddenly been dumbed down, and, it's just a shell of what it used to be. That's not the case at all. It's still very much, it has that retraversal nature where you're going through the world, and you're solving environmental puzzles just as much as you're gunning down enemies.
Yeah, and on top of that, I've got to give props to the level design, because you've always got the thing where you tease and you say, yeah, there's going to be something that I'll come back to later. In this game, though, it's really thought out, really well thought out. You're basically forgetting about an area, going on to a new place, and then by the time you're ready to come back, you're fine with stepping into that world again. And it kind of lends itself to that graphical diversity, too, within the levels, because you're not staying in one place for too long.
Exactly, and on top of that, you have that galactic map this time around, whereas in previous games, it kind of felt a little tedious drudging back from one place to another because the world was so big. It could take a long time just to get to one place. In this game, you have that map. You can jump from spot to spot, and that really takes some of the tediousness away.
Yeah, and then you combine that with the ability to fly and command your ship, and also having an onboard mini-map that's always on your screen, and just makes the game a lot quicker, a lot more fluid, and overall just more intuitive and fun to play.
I think you can probably tell by now that we really like Metroid Prime 3. We're going to give you a few examples, though, some specifics as to why we like it, or maybe dislike it a little. And I'm going to start it off by talking about the way the game begins. Samus actually starts out with all of her weapons and doesn't lose anything. And this is the first in the Prime series. You don't have to go back and find all these weapons that you somehow lost. This time she starts out as a badass, and she continues on. She picks up new weapons right off the bat and just goes from there.
Yeah, huge plus for me. I mean, finally we don't have to sit around and wait for a double jump. We don't have to wait for missiles. We don't have to find our charge shot. You feel like the badass when you start the game, which makes sense because you just finished Echoes.
Exactly.
So moving on, we're going to talk about one that is kind of a downside, which would be loading times. Basically, they've hid them really well. You can shoot doors, and the game basically loads before it opens it. Or, there are other times when the ship is flying in, and you see a cinematic, but it's actually a disguised loading time with repeats.
Right. I actually like the cinematics.
Of course, yeah.
They're done really well.
The cinematic side is great. The part that isn't so great is sometimes you'll shoot a door and you'll stand there and wait for like upwards of 5 or 6 seconds before the door even opens.
I think there's been a time or two where I've waited upward of 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And it happens especially on this one space station.
On the flip side, though, you've also got the corruption mode. Specifically, my favorite is the hyper mode in the game. Basically, Samus is corrupted, and you get to use a ton of really funky, like, phazon-based powers and really screw people up in the environment.
Yeah, you just hit the plus button on the Wii Remote, and you go into this mode. And what's cool about it is you're an ultra badass in this mode. You can take down enemies like Metroid in shots that would take numerous missiles. It would take a lot longer if you weren't in hyper mode.
Yeah, and also you develop them in tandem. So you'll start getting things in the main mode, and then you'll also start getting hyper mode things that are only being used in hyper mode. So it's a great way of doing kind of this light and dark thing, but not needing to split the gameplay.
Prime 3 also flows much better. Maybe it's a little easier than the first two games. I don't know. I think maybe it might be. But it does flow really well. You just go from point A to point B. There's not a lot of interruptions, except you get to this one point in the game where you have to do this fetch quest. And it's just really cumbersome, and I don't know why it's included. It doesn't do a lot to actually add to the experience. I don't know about you. What do you think?
Yeah, basically you're finding these energy cells, and it's pretty tough. I mean, you can use the logbook, you can use your inventory and kind of get clues for these things, but it is very much like the Halo 2 kind of thing where it's like, we're going off to the battle, we're about to finish the game, oh, but just kidding, you got a couple hours of fetch quests.
Yeah, oh, you need this energy cell, go find it, good luck.
Right.
And the crazy part was, Bozan and I just spent hours trying to find exactly where we could find the locations of these energy cells in our logbook, because it actually tells you in the game, look in your logbook. However, you want to look in your inventory screen. Remember this.
Right. We're showing it to you right now for a reason. Make sure you look at this.
Because otherwise you will be stuck for 7 hours like we were, twiddling our thumbs and wondering where the hell to go. The boss fights in this game are pretty epic and pretty satisfying. We're only going to show you one in this video, and it's an early one, but rest assured there are some great ones at Lion's Store. And I think you'll agree with me that they're just pretty awesome.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, they're better than Zelda's, in my opinion. And they keep ramping up the difficulty pretty good until I've got to say it was like a little bit of a miss for me that the game ends on an easier boss fight. But I have a feeling that has to do more with cinematics and less with, trying to get the gamer to, really stretch himself and have to repeat levels over and over.
Yeah, I think, too, it didn't hurt that we were pretty much an ultra badass at that point. We could rock the house,
exactly.
So. Oh yeah, overall the boss fights are really good. I think you're going to love it just for that. Also of note, the game has a really cool reward system, so if you get 500 kills, for instance, you'll get a medal for that. And that carries over into the options and extra screen.
Yeah, you can also actually connect to WeConnect 24. You can take screenshots with an unlockable screenshot taker, send those to people via the message board, get bobbleheads, all kinds of crazy stuff that kind of adds some replay value to it, and also throws in kind of an achievement system.
Indeed, check out our cockpit. I think that's a stunning bobblehead right there, wouldn't you say?
Not too bad, Matty boy. And the final one that I really want to talk about basically could act as a plus or a minus depending on who you are, but it's the fact that Corruption is still pretty much a continuation of Prime 1 and Prime 2. You're seeing a lot of the same gameplay, and pretty much it's the same feel, so if you're cool with doing it again, you're going to have a great time.
Yeah, it doesn't have that revolutionary feel that the first game had, because it was going from 2D to 3D back then. It does have those brand new controls which feel really great, it looks much better, and I think it flows overall better, and it's got that very cinematic feel as well. So overall, I think it might even be the better game, but we just can't rate it quite as highly because it's not quite that